Hello, everyone. My name is Katie, and I'm the founder and president of the NeoCyber Institute. I'd like to welcome you all to the first of several interviews in our cyber career series. Through this series, we want to show students what real-life cybersecurity is like and how they can get involved. We hope you all enjoy this first interview, and now I'll hand it off to Madeline to introduce our speaker.
Hi, everyone. My name is Madeline. I'm the Vice President of NeoCyber Institute. I'm very excited to introduce our first speaker of this series, Dr. Dan Manson. Dan is a commissioner of the National Cyber League Cybersecurity Competition, and he also works to educate students about cybersecurity through his program, K12 Talk, as well as he's a professor in computer information systems at Cal Poly Pomona. So Dan, thank you again so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Madeline, and thank you, Katie.
All right, so our first question is kind of asking about what your first exposure to cybersecurity was. So how did you get into the field and what kind of draws you to it?
Great question. I really became interested in the field in 2001, fall of 2001. I was department chair for computer information systems at Cal Poly Pomona. And I received an email about a grant that Cal Poly was part of with 4 other schools, Cal State San Bernardino, Oxnard College, Mount San Antonio College, and one other school. And it was a 5-year, $3 million Title V Department of Education grant. It was about improving the information assurance, the security infrastructure at the 5 campuses. And at the bottom of the email, they said, well, at some point, there may be some opportunities for faculty to be involved. And I've learned in life, timing is one of the most important things to take advantage of. And I knew in 2001, cybersecurity was going to become a much bigger deal. We had, basic problems in the 90s with floppy disks having viruses on them. But the more we were going to rely on the internet, I just saw the problems getting bigger. So I started attending the meetings of the grant, grant for improving the infrastructure. I was the only faculty there. The rest of the people were people responsible for IT, for running the operations on the campus, but they let me attend. So about 3 months into attending, they said, we should look at another grant. We should look at one for curriculum and for faculty. So I jumped on it. And I found other schools that were interested. And so we applied for a grant with NSF. We received a $900,000 project grant in 2003. That was the beginning for me to really go down this road because schools had opportunities not only to improve their campus, but to improve their curriculum. I used that first grant to have a computer forensics lab on our campus. We were, I think, one of the first schools in the Cal State system to teach computer forensics. We added courses in internet security, network security. That first grant turned into another grant, which turned into a $3 million grant to have a regional center for cybersecurity. And I've been working NSF grants since. But what I found a few years later is that there's something called cyber competitions. And there was a national collegiate cyber defense competition, but it was only parts of the country. It hadn't come out to the West Coast yet. It was started in Texas. And I talked to the folks who were involved in that competition, said, I would like to have the Western region. And they gave it to us. So we started the Western Regional Cyber Defense Competition in 2008. I ran it for 10 years, and I looked for other competitions. The first time I went to a cyber competition, I took a video camera and did some video interviews, and I'll never forget what one student said to me. He said, I can learn more in these 3 days of this competition than a year's worth of classes. It was learning from a fire hose. But what I realized is that that student spent 3 months preparing for those 3 days. If you're playing in a cyber competition, it's not what you do on that day of the competition. It's also what you do to get ready for it. It's like playing a sport. If you're going to play in a championship soccer game, it's not about all you got to do is show up that day. You have to prepare yourself for months and and years to be at that level. And I really believe that that's where we could go with this, that we could have students play cyber like a sport. And I've never let go of that. And so to this day, I truly believe that extracurricular activities in cyber are as important as what you do in the classroom.
Amazing. So I wanted to ask you a question about students in cybersecurity. So you mentioned how you first got involved in cybersecurity, but when you were in high school, did you hear anything about cybersecurity? Were you interested in computer science? What can you speak about in terms of the high school experience?
Well, when I went to high school, it was before punch cards, I believe. You know, to me, computers were always intimidating. When I was in high school, when I was in college, the first time, my first degree is in film video. And so I wanted to make documentaries. I wanted to do something like 60 Minutes. And I was able to work with videotape machines when I graduated. I worked as a TV reporter, and I'm sure there was some electronics in there and some computer activities in there, but I never thought I could be in that field. I didn't really know the field. And then after I was done with my time trying to make documentaries, my cousin was in data processing. That's what we called it back then. That was back in the around 1980. And he said, you know, if you want to go into this field, you're going to have so much opportunity. It's the field of the future. So I took my first class, Fortran programming class at Los Angeles City College. And this is something else that really matters. The teacher that you have can make or break whether you want to keep going in the field. And my teacher was Haris Seeds. She's is probably one of the 2 or 3 best teachers I have ever had. She made it fun. The way that she had the passion and the excitement when she taught Fortran, it made me want to continue. So I'll never forget the motivation I had from her. And when I was finishing the class with her, I said, you know, if I want to get a degree in this, where should I go? And she said, there's only one school I want to recommend to you, and that's Cal Poly Pomona. And so I went out to Cal Poly Pomona, and I didn't know anybody there. I didn't make any phone calls. I just started wandering the hallways until I found the data processing area, the data processing department. And there was an office with a line of students, must have been 4 or 5 students outside the door. I waited in line, and the teacher was Dr. Bob Stumpf, who became my closest mentor. And he took time for me. I wasn't a student there. He had no clue who I was. He took time for me. He took 15 minutes. And I asked him, what does it take to succeed in this field? He gave me a one-word answer. And I think that word applies today. The answer he gave me was fortitude. So if you look up what fortitude means, it kind of means having that willingness to persist no matter how much the obstacles are. When I was a student at Cal Poly, we used to do all-nighters in the basement of the science building. That's where the computer lab was. You couldn't work on your projects at home. We didn't have computers you could take home, but we used to pride ourselves on our ability to pull all-nighters in there. And I think I learned fortitude during that time. My first class was with punch cards, and with punch cards, you know, you could have one simple mistake, and you would wait a few hours to get your program back to see that mistake. It wasn't, you know, instantaneous. It was waiting a few hours for your program to run and then see the mistake you made. I think that students who want to go into cybersecurity, there are 2 words. There's fortitude, which means that willingness to persist, that willingness to not let obstacles stop you, and passion. If you don't have passion, it's hard to enjoy this field because it's a hard field. But I think it's extremely rewarding. Financially, you can be very successful in this field. And you get a good feeling because I think you're making a difference for the country. I think you're really helping our national security if you're in cybersecurity. And to have that combination of a well-paying field where you really feel like you're making a difference, how cool, is that? But you have to wake up in the morning with the passion for it. And when you have the problems, you have to have the fortitude to solve the problems.
That's amazing. So I know you've mentioned that you've done a lot of work with running cyber competitions, and I know that you're currently the commissioner for NCL. So tell us a little bit about what you do with that.
Well, I think it's cool to have that title, to be a commissioner, but some of the things you actually do aren't things you look forward to. So I love it when I can go out and promote the sport and tell people this is something you should do, this is something you should play. And then once in a while, this is what a commissioner does in any sport, you have to deal with violations. So in National Cyber League, it's a virtual competition. It's not a case where people are in the same room, which is collegiate cyber defense competition. That's where it tends to be. And you can watch the person play so you know whether they're doing something they shouldn't be doing. Because NCL is virtual, we have a few instances every season of what's called flag sharing, flag violations, where someone may share the answer with somebody. They may text the answer, they may post the answer someplace, and we catch them. We do a great job of seeing what has happened in the game. And if we see a violation, I'm the one, as the commissioner, who has to contact the teacher, the coach, and the student and find out if there's something they want to say, and then take the appropriate action. So I get to be a bad guy as commissioner, which, it's kind of like when you're a teacher and you catch someone that did something unethical in the class. But I would say, 90% of the time, it is a cool job to have because I get to promote a sport. I believe when you are playing in NCL, when you're playing in a competition, you're a cyber athlete. And I think those two words go together so well. I would love that to become, common in a dictionary, what a cyber athlete is. Because you're playing with the intensity and the passion of an athlete, but what you're doing is not only very competitive and very exciting, but it's taking you somewhere. Even if you're not going to be working as a cybersecurity professional, that knowledge of what happens in terms of cybersecurity, whether you're trying to prevent something from happening or take out a bad guy, you get that through competitions. You get that through playing a competition much more than just sitting in a classroom.
Definitely. And continuing off of your experience with NCL, is there anything you think that sets NCL apart from other cybersecurity competitions, or is there a specific direction that you want to take the competition in the future?
We started National Cyber League about 10 years ago. And those of us who started it were involved in the collegiate cyber defense competition. CCDC is a great competition, but the way the rules were set up then, you had to be a full-time student, you could not be working full-time, and you could only have one team from each school. So the team would be 8 players, you could have alternates, so a total of 12 on your roster. And when you played in CCDC, as soon as you lost, you were out of the running. So they had qualifiers, even before qualifiers, we had invitationals. But if you lost in the qualifier, you had no chance of moving to the next level. So we decided we want a competition that was much more inclusive. We wanted you to play a whole season. We wanted a gym that you could practice in. We wanted to have a way of ranking you so you could play against players with a similar skill level. Those are the foundations for NCL, and we wanted metrics. We wanted you to get something that you could take to employers and show this is how I performed. So we came up with the concept of a scouting report that would show your strengths in the various parts of the competition. With CCDC, you received a team score, but as an individual, you never were scored. And we thought it'd really be cool to have player performance at an individual level. And so we started it. It started slowly, but it's really caught on. We have over 6,000 players in the spring season and a fall season now, and it's been growing consistently.
I know Madeline and I have both competed in NCL, and we both really love those aspects you've talked about. So a lot of the other students who do NCL are in, like K to 12, not only like college students. So what other activities would you recommend to younger students who are looking to get into cybersecurity?
That's a wonderful question. And that's something I've really wanted to see more of. The students that come into Cal Poly, I tell them how great the field is, and then I tell them starting in college is too late, which some of them probably don't want to hear. So Cyber Patriot, I became involved with back in 2011 and helped create the middle school division for Cyber Patriot with LA Unified School District. So once we had the middle school division, you could be playing starting in 6th grade. You could play Cyber Patriot in 6th grade. You could be playing Cyber Patriot through high school. And with National Cyber League, we've wanted to expand it as well. So now, if you're 14 years old, you can play in Cyber Patriot. Basically, 9th grade and up, we have schools that play Cyber Patriot, and some of them hold their own with the college players. So definitely, I would say Cyber Patriot and Pico CTF, which is a wonderful game out of Carnegie Mellon that's also for middle school and high school. And Pico CTF is a game like Cyber Patriot. It's great preparation for National Cyber League because they're both CTFs. I think 6th grade is the sweet spot right now. I think eventually we'll get it down to elementary school playing in competitions. But I would encourage students to look for these opportunities as, once they're in 6th grade to play Pico, to play Cyber Patriot, and once they're 9th grade to play NCL. I co-wrote a paper several years ago, The Case for Depth in Cybersecurity Education. My colleague, who is the co-author, is Dr. Ron Pike at Cal Poly Pomona. And it was in IEEE Inroads. So it was in one of the IEEE publications. And we use Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hour rule, which says that if you practice a task for 10,000 hours, you can become a master. So we laid out a chart how you could have those 10,000 hours hands-on in cybersecurity by the time you leave college, except you have to get 5,000 hours before you go to college. So how do you get 5,000 hours of hands-on cybersecurity in 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade? Well, most of those hours you'll get through practicing and taking competitions. You'll get more hours in middle school and high school out of the classroom than in the classroom, although it's starting to change. We're starting to see cybersecurity courses in middle school and cybersecurity in high schools in the classroom. But I do believe that for a student that is considering going down this path, you have to, don't think of it as learning cybersecurity, think of it as playing. If you look at it like playing, then it's not going to be work. Do you play a sport?
Yes,
Which
I
sport?
used to
Which
run
sport?
track.
Okay, when you're doing track, do you say, oh no, it's like, do I have to do this like I'm going to class? Do you walk onto that field and say, oh no, why am I here? No, it's the opposite. You're so excited because you are there and you can't wait to warm up and you can't wait to practice for your events. That's what I want for cybersecurity. I want students to look at these competitions the way they would that if they were playing track and field, if they were playing basketball, if they were playing soccer, because you're a cyber athlete. An athlete loves to play. And I think the most successful people going into cybersecurity look at it not so much as work, but as something fun to do, something that drives them. So that the feeling you had when you were at a track match, right? The adrenaline.
Yeah.
That's when I see a student with that feeling in a competition, I know that they can succeed. And that's what I look for. I used to kid people when I was winding down at Cal Poly, my next career, I'm going to be a cyber scout. I'm going to be someone like a baseball scout. I'm going to scour the bushes, scour the country, and look for that talent. And I really believe that in middle school, I can find that talent. I can tell with someone who plays Cyber Patriot or someone who plays NCL or PICO, I can tell if they play like an athlete. And if they do, I know that they could go as far as they want in this field.
And so I know that besides these cyber competitions, another way that you try to encourage middle school students, high school students to get involved in cybersecurity is through your involvement with the K12 organization. So could you just tell us a little bit about how you got involved with K12 and what it is?
So K12 CyberTalk Talk is the show. The website is K12CyberTalk.org. In the spring of this year, there are announcements from the National Security Agency Center of Academic Excellence Program Office. And they had a series of grant opportunities. And one of the opportunities was for working on a K-12 pathway for cybersecurity. And there are actually two consortiums that went after this grant, and they both were funded. So one was out of University of Alabama, Huntsville, and one is out of Cassia, which is Moraine Valley Community College. I was on the Moraine Valley grant, and my role on the grant was to the extracurricular, to encourage participation in extracurricular cybersecurity activities. And I pitched the idea of doing the show, and they liked the idea. I used to have a show on YouTube on my CyberFed channel, CYBERFED on my channel, because I had another grant from National Science Foundation, and I used part of that to develop the show. Then when it stopped, I always thought it should be, continued, and I found the opportunity because there's such a need in K-12 to not teach this as, pardon for me to talk about computer science this way, but just as traditional computer science. It's much broader, it's much more engaging, and it's much more fun. And so I wanted to have a show that could find a place in middle school and high school where they had the opportunities to play an extracurricular. I wanted a chance for this to be delivered to these schools. Except I didn't want to be on camera anymore. I was on camera for the old CyberFed show. I am a firm believer in peer learning. And the schools that are most successful, I think, do that, where the seniors who have played competitions for a few years are the ones that teach the freshmen and the junior, and the high schools mentor the middle schools. And so I thought, well, if I can get high school students who have played in competitions to be the ones that run the show, to be the talent, to be the ones that tell the stories, the personal stories, and do the interviews, I thought we could reach a lot more students that are on the outside looking in, and they think, oh, I can't do that, or I can't be that way, or the people that I see doing this aren't like me. And I wanted to break those impressions. I think the show has a chance to do that. I really think if you look at people like you doing something that you want to do, you're going to believe you can do it more than if you see someone much older than you who doesn't look like you and they don't even talk like you. I just feel this is a way to reach the students in K-12 that we need to reach.
So for students who are in high school and already interested in cybersecurity, what advice would you give to them to help start connecting to other students who might not already like the field?
I think we should have a national community, not just of K-12 schools and not just of K-12 teachers, but of K-12 students. I really believe in clubs. And some of the coolest activities I've ever seen at the college level and the high school level have been through cyber clubs. So to me, having a national federation of cybersecurity clubs, at the college level, the high school level, the middle school level, I think it's a cool idea. I want the students to be able to connect with other students, the teachers to connect with other teachers. And I think clubs and competitions are a way to go.
And so in order to start these clubs, you obviously have to cultivate some interest. So how do you recommend selling cybersecurity to students who have never even heard of the field or have no interest currently?
What I want to have everyone see is role models and success stories. So on our show, one of the students on the show started a cybersecurity club at her high school. If you see how people are able to be successful, it can motivate you, especially if it's someone that, hey, I'm a student like her. I'm in her same age group. I can do that. But if you learn from others who have been successful, to me, that can make a huge difference. I would love to do a story, I think I will on K12 Cyber Talk in the future, on high school cyber clubs, and have on the show students who have started clubs. But you're right, it can be very intimidating and very hard, especially if you feel you're the only one. But how do you get past that? These students have. The students that I have at Cal Poly have. We have 3 cyber clubs for one department. For the Computer Information Systems department, we have a Management Information Systems Student Association that runs their own competition. We have students with an interest in the future of technology that competes in competitions and runs a tech symposium. And we have a Forensics and Security Technology club that creates CTFs and has wonderful speakers, including speakers from FBI and Secret Service. So I know it works. And to kind of be able to jumpstart it, to help others jumpstart it, I think it would be a terrific goal for K12 Cyber Talk.
So for students who are now interested in watching K12 Cyber Talk, where can they access the recordings of your show?
K12 CyberTalk.org. All one word, K12 CyberTalk.org. We post the shows there. We're going to be posting a link to resources such as NeoCyber Institute. We're going to have blogs from the students who run the show. I want it to be kind of a place to go to. Maybe we'll make it a place to hang out as well.
Amazing. And so I know we only have a few minutes left, but we did receive some questions about your work at Cal Poly. And so one question was, as a professor, how have you struggled during the pandemic and how have you worked to kind of surmount some of the obstacles that you face?
I taught 2 classes this semester online. I taught an IT audit class and an IT infrastructure class. The IT infrastructure class was Amazon Web Services Cloud Practitioner and CCNA Fundamentals with Cisco. Fortunately, the way that you went through the class was through some really cool online materials. So I was more of a facilitator for that class. The materials the students have to go through was available for them 24/7. And I made sure the students had access to the materials, made sure the students understood the materials, and made sure that if they had any glitches, I was resolving them. So that class was kind of designed for online. The other class, the IT audit class, was more of a face-to-face class that we were running online. And I had team projects in the IT audit class. When I teach IT audit, I want the students to do an audit. I want them to have some practical hands-on experience. Trying to get them to do an audit when they can't go to campus. They're not supposed to be together physically. So we live on Zoom, not the place you want to live the rest of your life, but that's what we have right now. I was able to get them the auditee. On our campus, we have a student-run data center, and the student-run data center was starting to use Amazon Web Services, so I had them do an audit of the student-run data center use of AWS. So it was an AWS audit. And I had to make sure that they had access to the students that were running the data center. So I facilitated a lot of communication for them and to the faculty that runs the student-run data center. But it's hard. I really missed being in a room, in a classroom with them, meeting with them after class, looking them face to face and look in their eyes and really tried to understand what's going on. I had a team fall apart. One team basically fell apart. And so, you know, I had to facilitate what was going on there. I had students that weren't showing up to class. I didn't know what was going on. Some of the students and their relatives got COVID during the semester. So I had to be flexible and go beyond the normal teaching to stay connected to them. I know I can do better next semester. This was really a learning semester for me, and we're online next semester as well. So one of my goals is going to be to make sure that they always have their camera on. Because if I was, a lot of times I was just talking to a name or a picture, and I need them to understand the value of the class is us looking at each other as well as just, what we're saying to each other. And I want to spend more time talking to them outside of class. I also did something good this semester, though. I brought in 4 or 5 guest speakers to each class. And these were alumni. These are alumni from different parts of the country. And I was telling them, yes, it is harder to network. Yes, it is harder to stay engaged. But online, you can meet with anyone. So I had alumni from the East Coast. I had alumni from the Northwest. And I had alumni that were fairly local coming on because they didn't have to travel. So I could bring them on at their convenience. I was able to have more guest speakers and a better variety of guest speakers than I normally do because I took the time to contact the alumni and bring them into the class. I hated the thought of students feeling that they weren't engaged, that they weren't connected, that people didn't really care about them. And I think you have to, when you're online like this, make sure you're connected with the students that you're teaching to.
That's amazing, Dr. Manson. Unfortunately, I think our time is up today, but we know you've done some amazing work, and we really appreciate you taking the time to come sit down for this interview.
Thank you, Katie. I want to give a shout out to NeoCyber Institute. Yeah, I didn't know about what you were doing until recently, and I'm really excited about what you've done and more excited about where you're going. You're really filling a need in the K12 space. Your story is one of the coolest stories I've heard. So thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. I look forward to hopefully working with you in the future, along with Madeline and the rest of NeoCyber.
Yeah. Thank you so much again.